You are not alone anymore. The farmer revealed a surprising truth to the bride with bruised face. The words pierced Emily like a bolt of lightning. She stood on the dilapidated porch of her grandparents' farm, the peeling paint echoing the tears she had shed, both inside and out. Henry, the grizzled neighbor, had seen the bruises under her makeup, the remnants of her past reverberating in the way his eyes had softened with empathy. But could she really believe him? The storm clouds rolled above, a chaotic reflection of her fractured self. What did it mean to not be alone anymore when loneliness clung to her like a second skin? Clearing the overgrown yard took more than just physical effort. Each weed she pulled felt like an act of defiance against the suffocating grip of her abusive fiancé. She sank to her knees in the mud, breath shallow and labored, as thoughts of him invaded every corner of her mind. Memories of his fists had woven themselves into her dreams and tainted her waking moments. She inhaled the earthy scent of the soil, hoping to ground herself in the present, but the weight of her shattered self-worth pushed down harder each day. The farm, once a place of comfort, now mirrored her chaotic spirit, abandoned, forgotten, yet still holding stories within its walls. Her heart raced when she explored the attic, stepping over stacks of dust-laden boxes. The musty smell mixed with a sweetness of nostalgia, and there they were, her grandmother's paintings. Vivid colors calling out from faded canvases unlocked a memory of laughter, of shared secrets over cups of tea. The pure emotion in each stroke ignited a flicker of inspiration, one she thought had long since extinguished. But the fear lingered. How could she embrace art when she felt like a fraud? The echoes of her grandmother's struggles with the art world whispered doubts, slicing through her resolve. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Emily shifted her focus as Henry trained her eyes on the canvas, urging her to express more, to let go of the unease she carried. But what if the art revealed too much? Could she risk being vulnerable again? Each stroke carved deeper into her soul, the landscape forming a reflection of her pain and a desire to break free. The competition loomed ahead, a chance to showcase not only her grandmother's unrecognized works but also what was left of her. But anxiety curled in her gut like a live wire, waiting to snap. As she felt the pressure build, the floorboards creaked beneath her. She stood alone in the world of colors and memories, yet the shadow of her fiancé grew nearer. His voice echoed in her mind, laced with manipulation and threats. It tightened around her like a vice. The mixture of exhilaration and dread brought her to a standstill. The moment she was preparing for felt too close, too real. Would she dare to share her art with the world? Or would fear snatch her back into the dark abyss she had fought so hard to escape? The door swung open suddenly, slamming against the wall, the air shifting with an electrifying tension. There he stood, an unwelcome specter from her past. She looked into his eyes, brimming with the same twisted familiarity that had haunted her nightmares. The room quaked, her heart thundering in her chest, leaving her breathless and trembling. Standing there, at this precipice of uncertainty, Emily faced a decisive moment. Would she reclaim her narrative, or would the shadows draw her back, dragging her into a life of silence and fear? The weight of his presence filled the attic, suffocating and familiar. Emily's breath quickened as she forced herself to meet his gaze. The bruises, both seen and unseen, throbbed in response to his proximity, a visceral reminder of her entrapment. His familiar smirk twisted her stomach into knots, a sickly reminder of the charming facade that had pulled her into the depths of despair. "Emily," he crooned, feigning concern, his voice like ice on her skin. "I was worried about you. Why did you leave so suddenly? We were just starting to make things work, weren't we?" His words dripped with manipulation, wrapping around her like a noose. They echoed like a song she thought she had forgotten, each syllable hammering at the fragile walls she had begun to build. As she stood frozen, doubt clawed at her mind. Could she fight this surge of fear? Would the drumming rhythm of her heart turn into a death march, leading her right back into the abyss? She recalled Henry's words, the revelation that she was not alone. Yet, could she truly face her past while she felt like a ghost of herself? "Get out," she whispered, the anger rising within, transforming into a sudden flame of determination. The embers had been lit, no longer did she want to be a flickering, timid light. The years of repression, the pain inflicted upon her, were too heavy to carry any longer. He chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound that held no warmth. "You think you can just dismiss me? You know that's not how this works." His approach was menacing, a predator easing closer to prey. But Emily felt a surge of defiance building inside her, a power she thought had dimmed for good. "I'm not your prey," she asserted, voice firm despite the trembling in her limbs. Each word was a tiny step towards reclaiming herself. She moved to the window, letting the light pour in, illuminating her surroundings. The vibrant colors of the paintings stood in stark contrast to the storm gathering within her. The art was calling her, a vibrant lifeline tethering her to hope. "Art saved my grandmother," she thought. "Art can save me." Could those brush strokes channel her pain, give it a voice? She could use her experience to transform the darkness into something beautiful. Her art transformed from vulnerability to strength. The mere thought empowered her. She could exorcise the demons staining her palette. What if she painted the very wounds he had inflicted, illustrating her journey toward healing? Would that act serve as an outlet for her pain, a channel to reclaim her narrative? "Emily, listen to yourself. You're not strong enough to fight this battle alone. You need me," he urged, stepping closer, but she raised her chin defiantly. "I don't need you." "I never did," she declared, feeling the swell of hope and confidence course through her like a river breaking free from an icy grip. She cast a furtive glance towards the paintings, and suddenly, the thought of sharing that power with the world made her heart race with excitement. He saw her resolve, the fire sparking in her eyes, and for a moment, there was fear lurking beneath his bravado. His confidence slipped, just a fraction, enough for Emily to recognize the cracks in his armor. But would she have the courage to press on? To unleash the art that had remained hidden for so long, not only from the world but from herself? In that moment of clarity, everything felt poised on the edge of a knife. "Emily," he repeated, voice dropping to a more sinister whisper, "you'll regret this." The promise hung in the air, thick as fog, threatening to engulf her once more. As he stepped back into the shadows, threatening to whisk her back into isolation, Emily felt a rush of purpose. She had made a choice, a pivotal moment that would resonate through her actions. The realization washed over her, she had the ability to take control not just of her narrative, but of her identity. The path ahead, obscured in uncertainty, called to her like distant thunder, intimidating yet exhilarating. And as she gripped the brush with renewed determination, the time had come to face not just him, but the fears that lingered within her. Would her journey through the canvas reflect her evolution, or would the ghosts of her past hold her hostage once again? The brush felt almost foreign in Emily's grip, as though it had not sensed her touch in eons. Yet there was a strange warmth emanating from its handle, a connection that urged her forward. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the world of her art, determination surged within her like a tidal wave, drowning the remnants of his oppressive presence. She stood before the canvas, blank and inviting, and inhaled deeply. Each breath transformed doubts swirling in her mind into whispers of possibility. This empty space was her battlefield, her sanctuary where she'd reclaim fragments of herself, pieces stained with past hurt but ready to illuminate her truth. She squeezed her eyes shut briefly, allowing herself to remember, not with fear but with the ambition of an artist determined to manifest her journey. And so she began, her brush gliding against the canvas, every stroke a conversation with herself. The process was daunting, the first few lines quivered as memories surged, flashes of laughter silenced by shadows of pain. But with each sweep of color, every splash echoing unspoken confessions, she began to craft a story. The black and deep reds depicted the memories she wished to erase, the pain that marked her like a tattoo with no desire for visibility. As she worked, her mind drifted to the words Henry had shared, the encouragement of not being alone. That truth flickered in her heart, warming the chill that had long settled in her bones. She could channel the intangible fear, bend it into shapes, colors, and textures that spoke of resilience and survival. The empowerment coursed through her, and a driving urgency to share these revelations filled her soul. What would it be like to unveil this piece of herself to the world? To show the rawness of her struggle, displayed not as a victim but as a fierce survivor. The thought jolted her. It took tremendous courage to stand in her truth, shed the layers of shame. The canvas began to fill with blues that emerged from the depths of her sadness, merging seamlessly with bold oranges fighting to break through like sunrise after a storm. It mirrored her evolution, the dark coexistence of pain and strength. Thoughts of him crept back into her mind, but she pushed them away, focusing instead on the sanctuary she was building with each stroke. No longer would she allow his threats to dictate her actions. She would shape her reality, using her past as the foundation for her art. "You'll regret this," his voice echoed, but it morphed into mere static as the sounds of her brush against the canvas became the rhythm of her heartbeat. Suddenly, a knock at the door broke her focus, sending a flicker of fear through her. She paused, brush hovering, uncertainty coaxing her heart to race. Who could it be? The last encounter had left her feeling vulnerable. Her instincts screamed at her to hide, to retreat from the openness she had just begun to embrace. But then a wave of defiance washed over her, compelling her to confront whatever lay beyond that door. She had just reclaimed this part of her life, and it was time to face the world outside her canvas. With a fresh resolve, she set her brush down and made her way towards the door, breathing deeply as she prepared to unveil her newfound strength. As the door creaked open, the figure standing there made her heart leap. There stood Henry, concern etched across his face. "Emily," the moment stretched, and she could almost see the words tumbling through her mind like scattered colors on her palette. Would she allow herself to reveal the depths of her transformation to him? What lay ahead was more than just an unexpected visit, it was another chapter in her story, a chance to embrace vulnerability and connection. The question loomed: would courage lead her further into the light, or drown her in the shadows? Her heartbeat thrummed in her ears, a rapid tattoo as she studied Henry. The intensity in his gaze hinted at a depth of concern and understanding that heightened her pulse. He stood there, rooted, as though the ground itself tethered him to that spot. "Emily," he began, the weight of those syllables hanging between them. She could sense the empathy swirling in the air, challenging the remnants of her doubt. Here was a chance not just to speak, but to unveil the colors of her internal struggle. "Why are you here?" The words emerged, sharp and tentative, as she fought the urge to retreat back into the comfort of her art. "I came to check on you," he said, his voice steady yet soft. "I know how important it is to start expressing yourself again. I could sense the shift in you when we last spoke. You're on the verge of something profound." Those words roiled inside her, an internal battle sputtering between desire and trepidation. But what if it's not enough? What if it's all just a facade? Henry took a cautious step forward, a bridge extended. "Art isn't about perfection, Emily. It's about pouring your truth into something tangible. The world doesn't need flawless creations, it needs authenticity." His confidence washed over her, filling the crevices of her insecurities with warmth. She thought of her canvas, a battlefield blooming beneath her brush. Struggling against her doubts, she pointed to the artwork. "Then you understand this isn't just color and paint. It's my fight. My past made visible." "Exactly," he replied, the fervor in his voice a silent anthem for her transformation. "It's your story. But don't let the specter of your past suffocate your voice. This canvas is not a reflection of weakness, it should scream with every ounce of strength you've gained." With each word, the static of doubt cracking apart like old paint. Her mind flicked to the faces of criticism she had feared, judgmental gazes reflecting back her insecurities. But Henry's encouragement shone like a lighthouse, urging her into the vast ocean of self-expression. What if he sees it? What if he comes back? The flash of panic sparked in her thoughts, racing like wildfire through her consciousness. He will only hold power if you allow him to dictate your narrative, Henry implored, locking eyes with her. You've begun to reclaim your identity through art, Emily. Let this piece tell your journey, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You can choose to channel those fears into something transformative. He stood there, unwavering, holding the truth of vulnerability with respect. She observed the sincerity in his eyes and felt embers of connection igniting within her. Emily realized that she didn't have to shoulder this alone. Sharing her truth through art forged a bond stronger than the shadows that sought to encapsulate her. Okay, she whispered, tightly gripping the edge of the door as if it were a lifeline. I'll share it with you. But it's raw. And I'm afraid of how it will be perceived. Then let us start there, Henry said with an encouraging smile. Sometimes, fear isn't an enemy but a guide that leads you into deeper understanding. A shift happened as her resolve solidified. For the first time, she felt a flicker of hope ignite itself. She stepped back, inviting him in, her heart racing not with trepidation but excitement. In sharing her art, she wouldn't merely unveil the canvas, she would reveal the truth hidden inside. As they moved toward the easel, a sudden thought crossed her mind, a shadow of apprehension laced with anticipation. Are you ready for what you might see? She asked, vulnerability edging her voice. Henry nodded, determination etched in his features. The question is, are you ready to embrace what comes next? With a deep breath and fiery resolve, Emily raised her brush, ready to dive into the colors of her journey. But as she prepared to reveal her heart's creation, a flicker outside the window caught her eye. A shadow moved, a looming figure that sent a chill racing down her spine. Her expression froze. What if this was the moment he returned, shattering the fragile sanctuary she was building? Emily, what's wrong? Henry's voice cut through her moment of panic. You need to see this. Dread pooled in her stomach as she turned her gaze back to the window. The unexpected truth outside threatened to unravel everything she had begun to reclaim. Emily's breath caught in her throat as the figure outside morphed from a distant shadow into an unsettling reality. She peered through the glass, heart racing, with every instinct screaming at her to retreat. The familiarity of his presence felt like a vice tightening around her chest, suffocating and real. Who is it? Henry's voice was a low murmur, the concern etched across his features palpable. It's him, she stammered, her mind racing back through a myriad of agonizing memories. He had embodied every shred of her previous despair, an echo of vulnerability she desperately wanted to bury under layers of vibrant paint and renew her sense of self. Stay here, Henry commanded gently but firmly. There was a protective fierceness in his tone that jolted Emily from her paralysis. The looming figure seemed to shift, caught between their world and the space of both her past and present. Each flicker of recognition sent arcing tremors through her mind. Her stomach churned, a tempest of flight or fight urging her to take action. As Henry moved toward the door, something clicked deep inside her. A burgeoning fire she believed extinguished flickered defiantly to life. No, she insisted, emotions roiling within like a simmering storm. This is my confrontation. He doesn't get to dictate my story anymore. Henry paused mid-step, surprise and respect melding in his expression. Are you certain? Absolutely, she breathed, her voice steadying as empowerment began washing over her. With newfound resolve, Emily stepped past Henry, unsteady but determined, her heart a metronome of purpose. She swung open the door, a symbolic threshold reborn from her past, and stood before the figure that had once haunted her nights. His presence was a malignancy, albeit familiar. She felt every ounce of doubt rise like bile as she faced him, his eyes scanning her with scrutiny and a twisted sense of satisfaction. Emily, he said, his voice dripping with condescension, I didn't think you could muster the strength to show your face again. Waves of anger and fear rattled within her. And I didn't think you'd still be able to control my emotions from a distance, she replied, fierceness igniting her tone. Each word was a brushstroke laced with defiance, cutting through the thick smog of intimidation he had always cast over her. I came to see if you'd finally given up, he scoffed, attempting to inject his perpetual demand for dominance into the space. But Emily felt another wave of empowerment crest, every ounce of her spirit shifted, deflecting his intent. Days of silence won't bind me anymore. Your judgment does not define me, she declared, forcing herself to meet his gaze. In truth, I've been creating. I've been reclaiming my narrative. Each brushstroke tells my story, not yours. She didn't recognize the fierce warrior emerging from behind her deeply entrenched fears, but this felt different. Words flowed like paint upon her canvas, bold and intentional. She was actively choosing the dialogue, refusing to let him script her climax. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught Henry watching, pride unfolding in his expression. She could feel the unspoken support buoying her, urging her forward. You think you matter, don't you? He challenged, but Emily stepped closer, refusing to yield space to his venomous words. I'll tell you what matters, she responded, voice resolute. It's time I paint my truth, free from the shadows you cast. As she felt the atmosphere electrify, she sensed the contours of her identity shifting beneath the surface. For the first time, she was not a victim to his presence, she was a creator, hell-bent on birth through expression. A silence stretched taut between them. Let us see if you have the guts to truly share that, he sneered, but now, his voice lost its sting, muffled beneath Emily's roaring resolve. Watch me, she replied confidently. And at that moment, something clicked, a realization that this confrontation was not just about her past, it was a pivotal turn in her journey toward true ownership of her narrative. As she turned to step back inside, a flicker of doubt lingered in her mind. What if he never truly left, lurking even in her art? Shaking off the thought, she allowed herself to re-enter the sanctuary of self-expression with a rush, but an echo resounded in her mind. Could she truly break free from the shadows, or would they always haunt her creations? Henry moved beside her, an assurance in his presence. What's next? He asked, a challenge yet a promise slipping effortlessly into the space. The question hung between them, heavy yet exhilarating, the thrill of artistry rekindling the warmth of possibility. Emily grinned, ready to explore the depths of her truth, unafraid. But as she prepared to return to her canvas, drowning in the colors of her journey, an unnerving thought gripped her. What if her past wasn't the only thing she needed to confront? What if unveiling her inner world unleashed truths greater than herself, truths she'd buried deep to shield her entire life? The stakes had never felt higher. Emily leaned down toward her canvas, her brush hovering above the surface, colors pulsing like her heartbeat. Each hue, each stroke, was a declaration of her intent to reclaim her narrative. But the thrill of creation was laced with a tension she couldn't shake, a shadow lurking just beyond her consciousness. The moment she reopened that door, she had stepped into an arena of confrontation, and the battle had only just begun. Every flicker of her brush felt weighted now, knowing that the emotional landscape she was about to reveal could shift dramatically with each choice. Her palette turned into a battlefield, a space where she would wage war not just against the remnants of her past, but also against the fear that had long held her hostage. She found herself staring at an unfinished painting, one she had started months ago but abandoned out of uncertainty. The colors were muddied, reflecting the confusion she had sheltered within. This moment felt critical. It was more than just painting, it was about finding clarity through chaos. What do you see? Henry's voice pulled her back into the present. He stood with his arms crossed, observing her closely, a silent cheerleader brimming with confidence in her trajectory. I thought I'd create a new piece to mark this moment, she replied, glancing at him, then back to the canvas. But it feels like I'm staring into a void. The colors don't speak, not yet. Maybe they're waiting for you to find your voice, he suggested, stepping closer, encouraging her to unearth the layers. Taking a deep breath, Emily dipped her brush into a vibrant red, a color she had hesitated to use before. It simmered with intensity, a reflection of her anger. The desire to heal was interwoven with the need to confront all that had ensnared her spirit. She pressed the brush against the canvas, letting it trail down in an explosive arc that shimmered with ferocity. "Remember," Henry added, punctuating the air with conviction, "the canvas mirrors your truth. Don't be afraid to paint the raw parts." His words resonated deeper than she expected, igniting a sliver of recognition within her. The raw parts, had she ever truly given those fragments the stage they required? From childhood dreams shuttered by skepticism to shame that served as shackles, she had suppressed so many aspects of who she was. What if I uncover something I'm not ready to face? She pondered, as the uncertainty of her own emotional terrain threatened to paralyze her. "Maybe," he replied thoughtfully, "but isn't that the essence of growth? To confront what lies beneath." With a renewed sense of purpose, she summoned every ounce of courage to press further into the canvas. The strokes began to come more confidently, layers of color overlapping, bleeding into one another, a visual representation of her myriad experiences. Each stroke was a testament, a whisper of healing and reclaiming, juxtaposed against the darkness she had endured. As the edges began to blend, she found herself staring into the depths of her spirit laid bare before her. In this splattering of emotion, she began to see gray shades shifting, the darker regions speaking volumes of her unresolved feelings. She felt both exhilarated and apprehensive, the balance precarious. What truths would emerge from this abyss? A sudden shiver coursed through her, a fleeting thought that perhaps uncovering these emotional layers might lead to a greater understanding. What if she could transmute her pain into something powerful? But then doubt flickered like a candle in a gust of wind. The shadow of her past still loomed, asking if she was truly ready to reconcile her heart's deepest wounds. What if the confrontation didn't end just outside her door? Can I truly release this? She questioned silently, feeling the weight of the brush against the canvas. As vibrant colors intertwined, defiance blossomed, yet fear curled at the edges like smoke. Henry's steady presence anchored her. "Whatever the outcome, you'll emerge stronger than before." His faith offered a tentative solace, prompting her to confront the cacophony within, the voices that had long held her captive. In that moment, Emily understood that the act of creation was more than a duty, it was a commitment to herself to traverse the landscape of her emotions and emerge unbound. Did she dare to push further? As she danced between vivid hues, a fresh resolve took root in her heart. She would embrace this exploration of self, ready to unveil the tangled web of her inner world, no matter the cost. The stakes were no longer just about her past, they involved the future she wanted to paint. But as the colors coalesced into a brilliant array, a dark thought crept in. Was she prepared to confront the truths her art might reveal? What if the process stripped her raw, exposing wounds she thought long healed? Drawing a deep, steadying breath, Emily dipped her brush again, ready for the plunge into the unknown, unwilling to hold back any longer. Each movement became an assertion of her will, but she was acutely aware that the canvas held her answers and perhaps more questions than she was prepared to face. As she lost herself in the act, the door swung open as if responding to her unspoken invitation. The shadows outside were not just echoes of the past, they were tangible, ready to test her resolve once more. How would she greet them this time? The air thickened with anticipation, a potent reminder that the journey was only beginning. Emily's brush glided over the canvas, each stroke pulling her deeper into the narrative unfolding between hues and shapes. The reds burned bright with her anger, but the subsequent strokes introduced blues and greens, colors she hesitated to mix, fearing they might dilute the rawness of her experience. Yet, they filled the spaces, creating a dialogue among the chaos, and the emotional gravity transformed into something more profound. As she painted, she sensed each color was charged with an echo from her past. Memories flickered to life, moments of laughter threaded with pain, joy interspersed with sorrow. This was the essence of her evolution, the intertwining of her lived experiences into a powerful tapestry. The more she engaged with the canvas, the more she began to feel the familiar weight of doubt clawing its way back. Was she truly prepared to unveil the entirety of her story? A voice broke through her deliberation. Henry had moved closer, intuitively sensing her struggle. Sometimes, the hardest part is understanding your own depth. It's inviting the shadows in to share the space. His tone remained steady but gentle, imploring her to surrender to this intricate process. Emily halted, paintbrush poised mid-stroke. What if I lose control? What if I uncover things I'd rather leave buried? Growth doesn't come from comfort, he reminded her, shifting the air around them with the power of his words. Growth demands confrontation, and the canvas isn't just here to mirror beauty, it's a confessional. His encouragement punctured the veil of her fears, and she plunged the brush back onto the canvas, blending the stark reds with calm blues in a tumultuous swirl. The colors entwined, giving birth to hues she had never dared to create before. This alchemy of emotion felt exhilarating, she was reclaiming her narrative rather than fearing it. Each color transformed her pain into strength, a landscape evolving with clarity. As the paint continued to flow, Emily's mind raced. The colors built layers mirroring her chaotic thoughts, but within that chaos, there was undeniable order. Each conflicting emotion found its place. The agony of loss danced alongside the hope of renewal, melding into something new. The image on the canvas began to take form, an abstract representation of her journey, a reflection of resilience carved through hardship. Then, a potent thought crashed into her consciousness, stopping her dead in her tracks. What if her art could speak not only for her but also resonate with others who had faced similar struggles? A rush of excitement tinged with fear ignited in her chest. Would sharing her story invite others' truths to surface, or would it further isolate her in her vulnerability? A wave of resolution washed over her. The tension coiling inside her began to unravel. Yes, her past was intertwined with shadows, but wasn't it also rich with lessons learned, resilience forged? It was all part of her identity. She could use this as a platform for courage. Yet, as she poured herself into this exploration, the realization hit her, she couldn't hide forever behind the vibrant paint. If she dared to display this piece publicly, there would be no hiding from the scrutiny it would invite. Could she withstand the questions, the judgments? Would the unveiling strengthen her, or would it make her feel exposed in ways she hadn't yet confronted? Feeling the weight of her breath, she attacked the canvas once more, each stroke firmer than the last. She painted with intention, the question of audience fading, consumed in the act of creation. She was sculpting a lifeline, not merely a visual spectacle. But as she stepped back to survey her progress, the doors she had propped open swung wider, inviting in whispers of her past that clamored louder than before. They beckoned her to recall the moments she had wished to forget, to face the fears she felt creeping back. Would her brush remain a weapon against those memories, or would it falter under the force of their return? A shiver coursed through her. Just as she had begun to find her footing, shadows loomed larger, and with them, speculation emerged. The canvas might soon become battleground or sanctuary, but which was it to be? Emily took a deep breath. This was the inflection point. The shadows were ready to confront her again, but perhaps it was time she confronted them, armed not with avoidance but with bold strokes and vibrant truth. The storm inside her brewed, a tempest of wavering confidence and rekindled determination. She knew she stood at the brink, poised to leap into the depths she had long evaded. Was her palette ready to spill forth the true essence of her being? With her heart pounding and her fingers trembling at the edge of her next brushstroke, she made a choice, one that could fundamentally alter the course not only of her art but also of her life. The time had come to embrace the shadows and redefine what they meant together. Emily stood before her canvas, the palette of colors swirling with the weight of her emotions. Each hue was a manifestation of her tumultuous journey, a journey filled with resilience, loss, and the concurrent fight against the shadows that had taken root in her psyche. The echoes of past experiences clung to her like ghosts, pressuring her to confront what lay within. She stepped back, studying the canvas. The reds and the blues fought for dominance in a dance that mirrored her internal struggle. Her heart raced, with each simultaneous triumph of creativity and spiral of doubt, she felt the weight of exposure looming over her. Had she truly harnessed the strength requisite for this transcendental act of revelation? With a deep breath, she leaned in closer, not only to the canvas but to the thoughts that intertwined with it. Vulnerability felt foreign yet crucial, essential for both her artistic expression and her personal evolution. Thoughts of standing before an audience, naked in her honesty, cluttered her mind. They threatened her resolve. What if the unveiling shed light not only on her raw truths but also the areas she felt shame for? Could she confront that shame, or would it shatter her? Pushing aside her uncertainties, Emily dipped her brush into a darker shade, intent on directing her focus toward the shadows instead of shying away. This was more than just paint, it was her life, her healing, the very embodiment of her journey. She needed that release from the cage of silence her past had constructed for her. As she painted the image of her tumultuous experiences, she began to discover pockets of courage hidden beneath layers of self-doubt. With each stroke, she transformed tumult into clarity. The canvas surged with life as images began to form, fractured but vivid like memories piercing through the fog of forgetfulness. It was a haunting beauty that whispered to her, beckoning her closer. Then the real challenge surfaced: would she share her art? Would she present the culmination of her heart's turmoil to the world? In her mind's eye, she envisioned a gallery filled with curious faces, their gazes probing into her painted soul. Exposure was both exhilarating and paralyzing, and she grappled with the notion as she transformed the colors from chaotic splashes into poignant dialogues. A revelation struck. The act of revealing herself through her art didn't just mean sharing her story, it could forge connections. If her art spoke her truth, perhaps it would allow others to voice theirs too. It would mirror the universal battle, one that many faced alone. The bravery she sought to cultivate was also an invitation to create a space where others could feel seen. Still, fear snaked back through her thoughts, gnawing at her progress. What if her unveiling brought judgment? What if critics saw her as weak, incapable of mastering her emotions? The weight of potential rejection loomed over her with insidious insistence. Emily paused, brush hovering above an untouched part of the canvas. In that suspended moment, she confronted an awakening truth: facing her fears meant embracing the possibility of connection, vulnerability, and even healing. This wasn't merely about her. In sharing, she could perhaps encourage others to release their burdens as well and recognize their shared humanity. With newfound determination, she let resistance fade, pouring vibrant colors onto the canvas with renewed fervor. The tints melded joyously into one another, reflecting not only her battles but also her beliefs, her conviction that vulnerability could wield power. Each brushstroke was a declaration of commitment to herself, to her art, and to those who would witness it. But as she stood back to admire her work, a sudden realization pierced through the buoyancy of her creative high. With the prospect of showing her art loomed a greater fear of revealing not only her narrative but the more complex emotions that had built the foundational fabric of who she had become. Would her audience grasp the depths of her struggles, or would they see only the surface? Emily's heart raced at the thought. Each visual note played a soundtrack as the artist within her wrestled with the noise of insecurity. It was time to decide: would she embrace the unpredictability of vulnerability, or retreat once more into the shadows? Daylight waned as Emily faced her canvas, aware that this choice could reshape her future and her understanding of self. As she dipped her brush into a haunting indigo, the door to her past creaked open wider, and the shadows whispered their secrets, beckoning her to step through into the light or deeper into obscurity. What awaited her on the other side of that brushstroke was something she had yet to comprehend fully. The indigo began to spread, pooling over the canvas like a tide threatening to drown her. Emily's heart raced with urgency. The brush felt both light and heavy in her hand, a paradox of freedom mingled with apprehension. There was a choice to be made, and she could feel the weight of it pressing against her chest. This movement toward her truths could be liberating or devastating. A single brushstroke could unearth more than just color, it could open a chasm of shame. As she painted, vivid scenes materialized, each stroke revealing fragments of her narrative, moments of laughter intertwined with sorrow, fragments of beauty woven together with threads of despair. Her emotions became palpable, splattered across the canvas in chaotic order, embodying the tumult within. Each twitch of her wrist echoed the heartbeat of her inner child crying out, yearning for acknowledgement. With each layer she added, however, insecurities began to claw at her again, whispering lies of inadequacy. She envisioned faces observing her work, dissecting her pain, questioning her artistry. Panic threatened to envelop her, urging her back to silence, but she refused to let it dominate her thoughts. The shadow of judgment loomed, yet it began to morph into something else: curiosity, connection, understanding. If her art could inspire even a singular soul, wasn't it worth the risk? Then, an unexpected clarity emerged. She wondered about the artists she admired. They too must have once stood at the precipice of vulnerability, much like herself now. Perhaps they had faced audiences with the trembling weight of exposure. Did they, too, grapple with fear that their truths might be dissected rather than embraced? Did they feel liberated upon sharing or terrified of the fallout? This stream of thought ignited a fire within her. Realization became her ally. She could use her vulnerability to craft an unspoken dialogue between herself and her audience. She envisioned her pain as a bridge, connecting her with those who felt isolated in their own battles. The notion of sharing her art was to offer a shared space, not just for herself, but for anyone willing to traverse the raw terrain of emotions. Emily dipped her brush into a brighter hue, a bold, sunflower yellow that seemed to dance with promise. The desire to create a pathway, one that illuminated shared healing, was growing stronger than her fear. This was the revelation she hadn't anticipated. Her art wielded potential, the power to bridge the invisible chasms between souls. With renewed focus, she navigated her canvas like a ship through stormy seas. Each stroke served as both an exploration and an assertion of intent. She painted moments of her life, the triumphs and defeats, moments of deep reflection shaping the contours of her narrative. The shadows that once felt threatening began to serve as integral elements, each delineating the light against the dark. But even as her color boldened and flourished, a nagging doubt remained tethered in the corners of her mind. What if the connection she craved remained unattainable? What if the audience turned away, their judgments sharper than she anticipated? It was then that Emily felt a surge of resolve. This time, she would confront her fears head-on. She set her brush down and took a step back, letting her eyes roam over the evolving landscape of color and emotion. The question simmered at the surface again: could she genuinely risk everything? Was she ready to unveil not just her narrative, but the myriad of emotions lying beneath? Each potential viewer could become a part of her journey, a participant in a dialogue she had long believed was solitary. In that moment, her acceptance of uncertainty became an empowering act. She felt a shift within her, realized the raw power of her story. It wasn't about whether others would see her as competent, it was about her willingness to stand in her truth, unguarded. Emily could create art that was not only hers but reflected the struggles that many shivered beneath, binding them together in shared experience. With the persistence of the setting sun casting warm hues across her canvas, she made a choice to embrace fear as fuel for creation, rather than a barrier to it. The path forward loomed broader and brighter, an uncharted journey with a myriad of potential. But as the last rays of daylight flickered, she felt a familiar chill creep upon her. Was she truly ready to face the reactions she might receive? Would her tale resonate, or would it fade into the void? As she contemplated those shadows creeping back into her thoughts, the door ahead trembled between the bright light she longed for and the safety of obscurity. Could she take that step into revelation, crossing the delicate bridge between self-doubt and self-acceptance? The canvas echoed with the promise of transformation, and she understood it was time to share her truth, but at what cost? Would her unveiling shake the very foundation of her identity or solidify it in unexpected ways? Emily stood in front of her completed artwork, breathless and heart-pounding. The canvas before her was a vivid tapestry of her past colors, swirling with echoes of joy, pain, love, and loss. For the first time, she saw her narrative laid bare, each brushstroke a testament to a journey once fraught with fear. In this moment, she hadn't just painted, she had woven together the fragmented pieces of herself into something whole. The image radiated with tension yet exuded vitality, a dance of shadows illuminated by rich hues. It was the culmination of not just her experiences but of her newfound strength, a tangible manifestation of resilience. This was not merely an artwork, it was her declaration of independence from the chains that had long held her captive. As she stepped back to take in the full breadth of her creation, the significance of what she was about to do filled her with apprehension. Would she really show this to others? The thought of exposing the depths of her heart was both exhilarating and terrifying. But somewhere within her, a resolute voice began to rise above the anxiety, the voice of a woman who had faced her demons and refused to let them dictate her future. Henry's encouraging presence lingered in her mind. He had believed in her potential when she had struggled to see it herself. Today, he had become a part of her journey, not as a savior but as an ally, gently urging her to embrace the complexities of her truth. Could she take that leap? It was time to conquer the last vestiges of self-doubt that still lingered at the edges of her heart. Emily ran her fingers over the textured acrylics, feeling the whispers of courage saturate her being. Each pixel was a piece of her, begging to be acknowledged, to be shared. Summoning her courage, she pulled out her phone, her hands trembling slightly as she framed the photo of her artwork. She hesitated, staring at the picture before her. Would they understand? Would they judge her? A sudden swell of empowerment surged within her as she thought not of their potential scrutiny but of the journey this piece represented, her story, her evolution. Before she could talk herself out of it, Emily clicked post and added a caption that spoke her heart: "This is my truth. The colors reflect my battles, my healing, and my resilience. I share this with the hope that if you see your struggle reflected, know that you are not alone. Together, let us embrace our narratives." A wave of anxiety washed over her as she hit share. The vulnerability in that moment felt electric, yet it was a current of freedom she hadn't anticipated. No longer was she merely the woman shaped by her past, she was the artist reclaiming her identity, rewriting her future. Minutes ticked by, her heart racing with anticipation as notifications began to pour in. A wave of comments flooded her screen, words of encouragement, shared experiences, and gratitude. Voices echoed back at her, validating her fears and triumphs all at once. Would this be where empathy flourished? Would it mark the beginning of a new chapter in her life? In that moment, she experienced a profound transformation. The shadows that once haunted her began to dissolve in the light of connection. Emily understood that her fears wouldn't vanish entirely, they were part of the fabric of her journey. Yet she accepted them as secondary to the vibrant life that was now hers to shape. As she gazed at the interactions feeding into her post, the allure of sharing her story crystallized into something sacred. No longer would she silence her truth. As one comment read, "Your story resonates more than you know," she felt the weight lift off her shoulders. Emily breathed deeply, the anxiety that had once defined her gradually morphing into a solid sense of purpose. She wasn't just an artist, she was a voice of resilience, one who had dared to confront her past and redefine her narrative through colors that told her story. This wasn't just personal achievement, it was a connection, a dialogue with others traversing similar landscapes. Standing tall, she embraced the journey ahead, stronger than ever. The canvas was no longer a solitary experience but a community of artists, survivors, and dreamers who painted their truths together. The world was waiting, and she was ready to step into it, bold, unapologetic, and free. It was time to inspire others to find their courage, to unveil their truths, and to transform their pain into strength. In her heart, she knew she was not alone anymore. Remember, you need to subscribe now to this channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show the world that these stories matter. Comment below your reactions and theories about Emily's journey and share your own stories because your voice deserves to be heard. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and understand the magic of vulnerability and authenticity.